Conference championship week is here, and this is the final big week of the college football season before we get into the college football playoff and bowl games. We'll start with Conference USA, and this one is a surprise. Jacksonville State and Kennesaw State. I don't think anybody in their right mind would have put these two teams in the conference championship game, let alone against each other. This has been a very interesting year for both teams. The Gamecocks are under first-year head coach Charles Kelly. Kennesaw State is under Jerry Mack, who took over for the first time this year. 9-3 for the Owls, 8-4 for the Gamecocks, and it's been very, very interesting in Conference USA. These are not two of the teams that anybody saw having this amount of success, and Jacksonville State's been through quite a bit of adversity. The quarterback position saw Caden Creel take over, and he has basically just done exactly what they needed him to do with Gavin Wimsatt not being the starter anymore. Wimsatt had a solid start, but they gave the keys to Creel. Over 1,200 yards passing, 8 touchdowns, but he had more of an impact on the ground. 973 yards and 6 scores. He averaged 6.4 yards per carry. But the biggest part of this offense, Cam Cook, getting him from TCU was a big-time surprise. I don't think a lot of people expected him to go to Jacksonville State, and he did wonders for himself. 276 carries for 1,581 yards and 15 touchdowns. He's been an absolute stud for the Gamecocks. He's been a huge reason why they've had the success that they've seen, and it's been fun to watch him play at this level. We knew that he was capable of doing that at TCU. It just didn't work out. And now he finds himself in a conference championship game with his new team. The passing attack is very much feast or famine, but I think Creel's provided some stability with that group, so that's been really nice. The defense has been disruptive, whether it's turnovers, tackles for loss, sacks. That's a group that flies around the field and is really fun to watch if you're a Jacksonville State fan. If you're anybody else, it's been kind of disappointing to watch this team do some damage to the offense that you have. This has been a very interesting year for Jacksonville State. They started the year 2-3. It wasn't a year where you thought, hey, this is a team that's going to compete for a conference championship. After that, they rattle off 5 consecutive wins and find themselves in this game thanks to a win over Western Kentucky last weekend. This has been a big surprise, but the bigger surprise is their opponent. Kennesaw State's coming off a horrendous year, and they found a way to go 9-3. This is not what anybody anticipated with this team, and it's been a very interesting team to watch. The offense took huge steps. Amari Odom has been a great player for them at quarterback. Over 2,100 yards, 17 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. He also ran for 379 yards and 7 touchdowns. Coleman Bennett leads the team with 634 yards rushing and 3 scores. Gabriel Benyard has been the big-time player at wide receiver. 877 yards, 9 touchdowns. Christian Moss, 602 yards and 2 touchdowns as well. So this offense has taken huge strides for this team to have this success. The defense, not as good as the offense, but has some big-time playmakers. Barron Hobson has been really fun for them this year. 120 tackles for him, 8.5 tackles for loss. Tylen Dunlap has been disruptive, 9 tackles for loss and 5 sacks for him. This team came out of nowhere to compete for a conference championship. It was a year where we thought, okay, this is just a better team than we expected. It started the year off 0-2, though the loss against Wake Forest only being a 10-9 loss maybe gave us an indication that this could be a better team. They absolutely tore through that next stretch, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 wins in a row before losing to these Jacksonville State Gamecocks. So this is a rematch of that game a few weeks ago before beating Missouri State and Liberty to get to this point. So it's been a fun year for these two programs. Now, Jacksonville State is a 1.5-point favorite in this game. They are a very good team, but Kennesaw State has that magic in them. We'll see what happens here. I trust Jacksonville State a little bit more than I trust Kennesaw State. Cam Cook is that stable player. This is a Jacksonville State team that looks much different with Creel running the show. And for that reason, I'm going to go with the Gamecocks to win this game. The Sun Belt Championship is Troy against James Madison. And while everyone expected the Dukes to be here, I don't think anybody picked the Trojans to get to this point. 8-4 for the Troy Trojans, 11-1 for James Madison. Now, James Madison is going to have their head coach, Bob Chesney, move on to UCLA. So that is going to be an interesting element for this game. Does that affect this team, or they continue playing at the high level that they're capable of playing? They're 22.5-point favorites. They have done a lot of damage to the Sun Belt this year, and that could continue in the championship game. They are clearly the better team, but Troy is not going to lie down. They are not going to give in, and it's going to be fun to see how they compete in this one. Now, going into this season, Gerard Parker had a lot of questions to answer. I think that there were a lot of people that were skeptical, including myself, of what this team was going to be, as well as his ability as a head coach. He has exceeded those expectations, quieted those questions, and silenced the doubters surrounding this program. An 8-4 season will do that for you. Quarterback position has been two guys, Tucker Kilcrease and Will Crowder. I think that have been very interesting players to watch. They've had various levels of success, and Kilcrease has been really fun as of late. The offense has been a big reason why they've had their success. Tay Meadows at the running back position has been a big reason why they've had certain success, but also a group of pass catchers that people might have forgotten about. Ra Thomas, you might have known him from his time at the Power 4 level. He has been a solid player, leads the team with 495 yards. He also has the team lead, tied for the team lead with 5 touchdowns. Trey Taylor, 28 catches for 478 yards. He's been another big-time threat. DJ Epps, 40 catches to lead the team, 430 yards, and tied with Thomas with 5 touchdowns. Now, Troy is a team that I don't think a lot of people knew much about, especially when they started the year 1 and 2. There weren't a lot of people that knew that this was going to be a team that competed at a high level. Now, here's the thing. They start the year 1 and 2. They win 5 games in a row. Then they lose to Arkansas State by 13 and Old Dominion by 33. They have not played James Madison this year. So when you look at who they've played, and some of the things that they've done, the 11-point loss to Clemson, you played certain teams close, which gives them confidence going into this game. But how do you get over the edge? How do you win a Sun Belt championship? Because this is a James Madison team that's been competing for a playoff spot, which is still on the table. James Madison could potentially, depending on what the committee thinks of them, get into the college football playoff if Duke wins the ACC. Now, they're also going to have to fight against the Mountain West champion, so there is still plenty of stress on James Madison. Turnovers are going to be a big thing, and it's not that this is a Troy team that's turned the ball over a ton, but they've been opportunistic with their turnovers. They've had guys be disruptive. Donnie Smith, a defensive end, 11.5 tackles for loss, 9 sacks. Jordan Stringer leads the team with 104 tackles, 11 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. So if you're going to beat James Madison, this Troy team has to do it with disruptive plays and creating turnovers. That is going to be the biggest way to ensure you have a shot. You're 22.5-point underdogs. There's a reason why James Madison is the favorite. When you look at how this team has played, this is a collective group that plays well as a whole. Alonzo Barnett has been phenomenal, especially as of late. Over 2,400 yards passing, 20 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. He's also run for 459 yards and a team-leading 13 touchdowns. He is the reason why they've had so much success offensively. He's provided stability. They've finally gone away from that 2-quarterback system that I talked about early in the year. That, to me, was the biggest thing keeping them from having success, or at least reaching their ceiling. The 2-quarterback system just doesn't work if you want to be a serious contender. They went away from that. They used Matthew Sluka in certain situations, but Alonzo Barnett has been clear as day the starter, the go-to guy, QB1. That has helped this team tremendously. Wayne Knight has been an absolute stud. 169 carries, 1,051 yards, 8 touchdowns. He's averaging 6.2 yards per carry, but he's also been a big factor in the passing attack. 35 catches, 368 yards, and 1 touchdown. James Madison has had a number of rushers give him some breaks as well. The depth at running back is something that Troy is going to have their hands full. The passing attack, very similar to that. Their leading receiver is Landon Ellis with 32 catches for 532 yards and 5 touchdowns. Nick DeGennaro has been an absolute stud, an explosive player for them. 386 yards is not anything crazy, but he's averaging 18.3. You don't necessarily, besides Alonzo Barnett, have one guy you can focus on that you can take away. That just doesn't work with this team. That is going to be tough for Troy to overcome. The defense for James Madison as well, extremely disruptive, extremely good at making negative plays for the opposing offense. So if you're Troy, you have to be able to be disciplined, block those guys, and limit the explosive plays. This is going in James Madison's favor. Yes, there is the distraction of Bob Chesney. That might be a factor in this game, depending on where this thing goes. Now, this is an early enough game where they have to win because there's still a chance that they get in. The ACC championship game is the last championship game on Saturday. This game is on Friday. So they still have everything on the table. There won't be a result of the ACC playing before them that might affect this game. Same thing goes for Troy. They have the ability to pull off the upset. They know that James Madison is going to be focused and motivated to win this game. That is going to be a tough test. If Troy does what it does best, which is keep things close, they have a chance. Unfortunately, James Madison is just so good. They have been on an absolute tear. When you look at what they've been doing in the second half of the season, they are just running past people. Outside of Washington State, they've been very good in the second half. Starting with Old Dominion, they put up 63 points. Texas State, 52. Marshall, 35. App State 58, and then the final game this past weekend against Coastal Carolina, they won 59-10. They are on an absolute tear. They are trying to put up a good performance week in, week out so that the committee thinks of them favorably. And then if Duke does win the ACC championship, this is a team that is primed to take that playoff spot. We will see what happens. I have James Madison winning this game, but I'm very interested to see how this game plays out. The American Conference Championship game features two teams that will not have their head coaches next year. They're both looking for new leadership, and I'm very curious to see how that impacts this game. North Texas is an 11-1 team that's had a tremendous success under Eric Morris. Tulane is 10-2, and they see John Summerall departing as well. Morris is going to Oklahoma State. Summerall is going to Florida. We knew that this is kind of what happens when you're a good group of 5 team. When you're a good American Conference team, there are other teams that are going to come in and try to take your head coach. This is just part of being one of those teams. Now, it still leads to an exciting season. North Texas has been the big time surprise of the American. Tulane has kind of met expectations in a way. This is a big game. Playoff hopes are on the line, and the winner essentially gets to go to the college football playoff and probably will be, I would guess, the 11 or 12 seed, depending on how things shake out. Now, North Texas is a 2.5 point favorite, and it's a big reason why is because of their offense. Drew Messmaker has been an absolute stud. Over 3,800 yards, 29 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. The passing attack has been tremendous. And we knew that coming into the year. In fact, we didn't really expect the rushing attack to do what it did recently. More on that here in a little bit. But the passing attack has been absolutely dangerous. When you look at this group, there's not really one guy, even though Wyatt Young leads the team with 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns. I mean, he's probably the one guy you would look at, but you have guys that can take over when needed. Cameron Dorner, 769 yards, 6 touchdowns. Miles Coleman, 411 yards, 1 touchdown. Landon Sides, 389 yards, 1 touchdown. Trey Williams, 319 and 4. This is a passing attack that has been balanced at time. Now, Wyatt Young has obviously been more consistent as of late. Dorner's been very good, but make no mistake about it. Just because you take away one of these guys does not mean that you are going to take away their entire passing attack. They are so deep that you have to worry about every single one of them. If you do not do that, you're in for a world of hurt. And Tulane knows that. And Tulane's defense is going to have to be disruptive. The problem is that they can't just focus on the passing attack. Caleb Hawkins has emerged as a big-time freshman, and we didn't know his name coming into the year, but we know it now. Over 1,200 yards, averaging 6.3 yards per carry, and 23 touchdowns. He's been an absolute stud and balances out an offense that was already dangerous even without him. When you look at his production, because when we're talking about the schedule here in a little bit, we're going to need to discuss the impact that he has on this team. Because again, we didn't know his name coming into the season. And when you look at his production before this recent takeoff, look at Lamar, 18 yards against Washington State, 50 yards against Army, 99 yards, South Alabama, 140, USF, 59. So you had a couple of games, the Army game, 99 yards and 4 touchdowns. South Alabama, 140 and 2. He was starting to emerge as a name. The USF game, which was a 63-36 loss, that's important here in a little bit. Not really a guy that you were saying, hey, this could potentially be a dynamic threat for this team. After that, though, he absolutely took off. UTSA, 133 yards, 7.4 yards per carry. The Charlotte game, obviously a step back, 48 yards. Navy, 197 yards, 4 touchdowns. UAB, 189 yards, 5 touchdowns. Rice, 97 yards, 3 touchdowns. And the last game against Temple, 186 yards and 4 touchdowns. His final 4 games have been absolutely crazy. And this is a group that's going to rely on him to balance out that offense. The USF loss is really what's hanging over North Texas' head, and all they've done since then is average 50 points a game and won their final 6 games. So they have been on an absolute tear. Now, what's going to happen when they face this Tulane team? That is the big question. They didn't really have the balance against USF that they've found over recent weeks. Now, the one thing you can point to is who have they played recently? That's a big question right now. The win over Navy obviously is a solid win. We'll give them that. But besides USF, there haven't been any teams they played in the second half that you've been overly worried about them struggling with. So this is going to be a big key for them. They've built their confidence. How do they handle a team like Tulane to be able to pull off this win? That's going to be a big question in their offense. The balance of that offense is going to be a big key. Now for Tulane, I'm very interested to see how this team responds. John Summerall is going to Florida. I don't really know. I haven't heard the updates on whether Morris and Summerall will coach the playoff. I hope they do. It's kind of dumb if they're not going to, because that would just be such a waste, but I do understand it. How does this Tulane team respond? I felt like John Summerall has been as on as you can be as a head coach with his team, and the play with this team has been relatively consistent. I don't think that they've had any more struggles than we've seen before he decided to go elsewhere. Jake Retzlaff has to play well in this game. If North Texas scores points, this Tulane offense needs to have its moment as well. They need to be consistent. They need to play at a high level. And we've seen times where they've done that. We've also seen times where this offense struggles. Retzlaff is the X factor that makes this offense go. Over 2,700 yards, 14 touchdowns. He also leads the team with 561 yards and 14 scores. The rushing attack at times has looked good, but if the teams can take that away, that's going to be a problem for Tulane. This is not an offense that's designed to be a straight drop back team and throw it a bunch of times. They need the rushing attack to be consistent. If the passing attack can find ways to be efficient, then they won't have to worry about North Texas taking away that rushing attack. And this is a North Texas defense that's been inconsistent. Teams have put up points against the Mean Green. I mean, USF put up 63. Now that's an offense that's much different than Tulane's, but teams have been able to put up points regardless of who they are against this North Texas defense. So Tulane has to find a way to be able to do the same thing. They have to find a way to be explosive, to create balance in their offense. They need their defense to slow down this opposing offense as well. North Texas can score in a hurry, and one way you can do that to negate that is being disruptive. And if there's a team that can do that, it's Tulane. John Summerall does a great job of giving different looks and being multiple in what they do. How do you disrupt Drew Mestemaker is the question he has to figure out. How do you get him to make mistakes, turn the ball over, or hang on the ball just long enough for this defense to get to him? You've seen big players step up. Harvey Dyson has been explosive for this team. Sam Howard has been a leader of this team. The defense, especially up front, can have a big time impact. And if they're getting hits on Mestemaker early, that means that UNT is not making explosive plays, and turnovers are more than likely because that speeds up his internal clock. That gives this secondary that knows what to do when the ball's in the air time to pick off those passes. That is going to be a huge key for this team. It's just that North Texas is on a tear. And again, if North Texas gets off to a strong start and Tulane can't keep up, I think that is going to be a blowout win for North Texas. Now, if Tulane's able to keep things close, we'll see. I'm going to go with Tulane here. I think that if they create turnovers, that's going to give them an advantage that North Texas maybe can't handle, but that's the big key. If Tulane can handle this offense, they're going to be fine. If North Texas continues its ways and continues their balance, they are going to run away with this one. This is going to be fun regardless. Doesn't matter who's winning this game. It's going to be absolutely entertaining. The Mountain West Championship features two familiar teams, and it's not exactly what we anticipated coming into the year. UNLV at 10-2 plays Boise State at 8-4. Some things helped Boise State get into this point. Same thing with UNLV, but we are back. And these are two teams that have kind of had interesting years. Now, UNLV has been a team that its offense has been exciting, defense has been extremely porous. Boise State is dealing with a new quarterback since Madison went down, and the defense hasn't been what we expected either. So this is going to be an interesting game, and also the college football playoff is on the line. If Duke wins the ACC championship, there is a chance that the Mountain West winner gets into the playoff. So there's a lot at stake for this game. Now, Dan Mullen's first year at UNLV has largely been a success. Going 10-2 is nothing to be ashamed of. The offense has been explosive. They're 12th in scoring offense. The defense has, like I said, been a problem. They're 89th in scoring defense. Now, this has been kind of what we anticipated with Dan Mullen. We knew the offense was going to be good. We had questions about the defense. The first question we had with the offense, though, is the quarterback position. There were people who believed that Alex Orji was going to compete with Anthony Calandria for that starting spot. That turned out to be wrong. Anthony Calandria was clearly the better option, and we saw that early on. Now Alex Orji goes down with an injury. That kind of solidifies everything. Calandria has been a stud for them this year. Over 3,000 yards passing, 22 touchdowns to just 8 interceptions. He's second on the team in rushing with 555 yards and 8 touchdowns. Jaden Thomas has been kind of that solid piece, that steady hand for this offense. He's averaging 7.4 yards per carry still, 12 touchdowns on the year to lead the team, as well as his 944 yards. This has been a fun group to watch, a fun tandem in the backfield. Now, Mullen brought in a ton of talent via the transfer portal, but one of those familiar names is Jaden Bradley. You look at what he's done, 834 yards and 4 touchdowns to lead the team. He is a former transfer. It's just that he was one of the lone returners, or one of the few returners, I should say, for this offense. The passing attack has been kind of up and down, but it feels like they found their footing. And there's not really one guy outside of Bradley that Calandria really goes to. So that's really exciting if you're looking to give UNLV an advantage here. The defense is really where you need to see improvement. And when you look at what this team has done, recently they've kind of stepped their game up defensively. They played Colorado State, Utah State, Hawaii, and Nevada. So take that with a grain of salt, if you will. Hawaii and Utah State, though, are fairly solid. They gave up 17 points to Nevada, 10 points to Hawaii, 26 to Utah State, and 10 to Colorado State. Prior to that, they gave up 40, 56, 48, 17, 38, 23, 21, 31. So they have definitely improved in the last month in terms of defensive production. So that is something that should go in their favor. That does help them. And they're going against a Boise State offense that is not the same. Well, we knew that they were going to have some issues with Ashton Genty being gone, but the rushing attack appears to be okay without them. without Ashton Genty. Dylan Riley has 1,016 yards, 10 touchdowns. Sire Gaines, 731 yards, 7 touchdowns. Malik Sherrod, 395 and 4. So the rushing attack hasn't struggled like some people predicted. The problem is that Maddox Matson went down and the passing attack has been very inconsistent. Max Cutforth has just not been the same as Maddox Matson. And the thing is, Matson isn't the most consistent quarterback, but he gave you that experience. He gave this team playoff experience that gives you kind of that steady hand when times get tough. This has just been a different passing attack, a different offense with him gone. They still rely on the rushing attack, but the passing attack is a little bit more of a question. And if you're UNLV, I think they have to feel pretty good about what they could potentially do in this game with that being said. Now, Boise State's defense has to find a way to limit the explosive plays. UNLV is a team that thrives on those explosive plays, and that's going to help them pull away. Boise State is a 3.5-point favorite. When you look at what they've done in the past against UNLV, this is a UNLV team that has struggled to compete with Boise State. And if the Broncos can create some turnovers, create some disruptive plays, that's going to be something that goes in their favor pretty quick. When it comes to picking this game, I need to see it before I can believe it. Explosive plays are going to be a big key for UNLV to be able to hang in this one. Now, Boise State's offense isn't going to be what we thought it would coming into the year, but they still have the experience. They still have the experience of winning this game, playing in this game, and I'm going to lean with Boise State here. It's not a super confident lean, but I'm going to go with the Broncos based on that experience. A rematch of an earlier November matchup between BYU and Texas Tech for the Big 12 championship. BYU is trying to figure out how do they make this result different. Everybody, I feel like, is going to pick Texas Tech to win this game, and the Red Raiders are 13.5-point favorites. But let's dive into what BYU can do. Now, there's a couple of things that they can do, and they're relatively simple. But let's dive into this team. This has been a team that continues surprising people, and anybody that has doubts about Kalani Sitake after this year probably is just going to be wrong the rest of their life. Sitake has exceeded expectations for yet another year, and this team is 11-1 because of the work that he's done. And this is a team that came into the year with adversity. Quarterback situation was up in the air. Jake Retzlaff transfers out of the program. You're not sure who's going to be the quarterback, and Bear Bachmeier steps up and takes over. Now, there were concerns about him as a freshman. Freshman quarterbacks, there's always some growing pains. And while there are some things that he obviously still has to get better at, this has been a guy that's provided some stability. He's provided some relief of that anxiety or the anxieties surrounding the quarterback position. And Sitake's done a great job of getting his quarterback to just play within the system and play consistently. Over 2,500 yards, 14 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. He's also been a factor as a runner, 529 yards and 11 touchdowns, which is tied for first on the team. He's a tough, physical player who does not shy away from contact. He does not shy away from the moment, and he makes plays when they're given to him. When the opportunity has been given, he takes it and runs with it. Now, the nice thing is that LJ Martin has been as advertised. Over 1,200 yards with 11 touchdowns, averaging 5.7 yards per catch. This was a rushing attack that we knew was going to be solid. It's just that we haven't had to see the depth that we know they have. BYU's got good depth at the running back position. They just haven't had to use it. Martin stayed healthy, knock on wood. He's been consistent, and Bachmeier has given them another element to that rushing attack as well. Now, we also saw players step up in the passing attack. Parker Kingston actually leads the team in receiving, which is crazy with what we saw coming into the year. 57 catches, which is first, 804 yards is first, and he's tied with Chase Roberts with 5 touchdowns. Parker Kingston was a dynamic returner that we had questions about coming into this year. He's exceeded those expectations. He's made himself a reliable wide receiver, and now they have more ways to get him the football. And if you've watched BYU this year, you know exactly what he's capable of doing with a football in his hands. You know exactly how dangerous he can be when he has the ball. Chase Roberts was the guy that we thought, okay, this is the stable player that gives them a go-to wide receiver option. 44 catches for him, 713 yards, and that team leading, tied with Kingston, 5 touchdowns. That's a great duo. Carson Ryan's been solid as a tight end as well. He stepped up in a big way. LJ Martin's also contributed. Now, one thing to keep note of, JoJo Phillips continues to make some interesting plays. He was hurt for most of the year, and now he's been playing well as of late. He's a big X factor that I don't think a lot of people are paying attention to, and he's still kind of trying to get his chemistry with Bachmeier. He's still trying to get his footing, trying to get used to what's going on in this offense. That is someone that could be a big difference maker. He has good size that Texas Tech isn't maybe used to seeing, and I think that's going to be something to keep an eye on. That's going to be really fun for BYU if they're able to make that happen. Now, a big reason for this BYU team's success is the defense. The defense has exceeded expectations. From turnovers to disruptive plays to new faces stepping up in a big way. Coming into this year, there were questions about everything on the defense except for linebacker. There were questions about the defensive line. There were questions about the secondary. Not necessarily super negative, but just questions of who are the guys that are going to step up? Who are the players that will be those reliable playmakers? The linebacker position provided that stability. Mostly Isaiah Glasker and Jack Kelly. Now Siale Isura has been the guy that we had questioned about who's that third guy. Isura has been that third guy, and he has played really well. It's just that Glasker and Kelly are on another level. Glasker, 55 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 picks. Jack Kelly, 52 tackles, 12.5 tackles for loss, and also a team leading 9 sacks. Those two have been absolute studs, and the guys around him have elevated their play to match that. The secondary has been very good. When you look at what they've been able to do, this defense is a typical, stereotypical BYU defense. Physical in the trenches, disruptive in terms of turnovers. They have multiple guys with 2+ interceptions this year. That has been a group that's thrived on disruptive plays. Tanner Wall and Evan Johnson have 4 picks each. That's a group that loves to make life difficult. And one of the keys for this game is turnovers. If you're BYU, you have to find a way to turn over Texas Tech. If you can create turnovers early, we've seen Texas Tech struggle with certain teams. We've seen them struggle early in games. And if BYU can turn up the heat, it has to be in the beginning of the game. Texas Tech is one of those teams that only gets better as the game progresses. If you allow them to just continue going as scheduled, this is going to be a tough team to beat. If you put something in the way, put an obstacle, put a wrench in their plans, that's where you can get Texas Tech. That's where BYU can shock them. BYU's turnovers are going to play a huge role. When you look at what happened in the first matchup, that was a game that Texas Tech honestly should have won by more. So if you're going to put a wrench in things, you have to do it via turnovers. Now for Texas Tech, the real, I think, game plan for this is just keep doing what you're doing. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You don't need to do anything different. This is a team that when they're playing at a high level, they'll take over any game. Now, the one thing I will say that they could do different is figure out a way to start putting 6 points on the board instead of 3. Get touchdowns instead of field goals. One of the biggest things that they're going to have to do in the playoff is score touchdowns. Field goals are fine in some of these games, but touchdowns have to be a priority. If you are going to win a national championship, you have to put up touchdowns against some of the teams that they'll face. I think that that's going to be a huge key for them going forward. In this game, maybe it won't matter. It didn't matter in the first matchup between these two, but in the future, it is going to matter. Texas Tech has to score touchdowns instead of field goals. Now, ever since Baron Morton has been the undisputed starter, this offense has been successful. Again, the stalled drives is where you have a concern. But Baron Morton's been solid. Over 2,400 yards, 20 touchdowns to 4 picks. The other thing that we saw this year, we knew that the passing attack was going to be good. We knew that they had the talent. But what was the rushing attack going to look like? Now, this team brought in Quinton Joyner to be that RB1, and there's a lot of excitement about what he could do for this offense. He goes down, and there are questions about what Cameron Dickey and Jacoby Williams can do. Apparently, those questions were ridiculous, and I was one of those people that was concerned about it. But those questions were ridiculous. All Cameron Dickey has done is run for over 1,000 yards and 13 touchdowns. Jacoby Williams, over 1,000 total yards and 8 touchdowns as well. They have been a dynamic duo and a big reason why this team's found balance. In fact, the passing attack that we expected to be so successful does not have a 1,000-yard receiver. Now, by the end of the season, that will change. Caleb Douglas has 823 yards and 7 touchdowns. Reginald Virgil's been a nice addition. 590 yards and 6 touchdowns for him. Coy Aiken, 560 yards and 4 touchdowns. Terrence Carter, 530 and 5. That foursome has been tremendous, and they've kind of taken their turns being the star player for that passing attack. That gives Baron Morton so much peace of mind, knowing that he can just do what he wants, and this offense should be able to have success no matter what. That's extremely exciting if you're Texas Tech. The defense has also been absolutely phenomenal. When you look at what Joe Wood has been able to do, having the talent they do puts them in a position to win football games. David Bailey and Romello Height are difference makers up front. Jacob Rodriguez is in contention for the Heisman Trophy. They're even using him on offense. 104 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 4 picks, 7 forced fumbles. Dude has been everywhere. And we knew that the linebackers were good. It's just the defensive line has stepped up in a big way. This game, honestly, there's not much that I've seen from BYU recently that's going to make me think that the rematch is going to end differently. Texas Tech is a 13.5-point favorite, and there's a reason for that. I think the Red Raiders win this. They win the Big 12 title as long as they take care of the football, and they'll be on to the college football playoff, where their concerns will then turn to how do we score enough points against the good teams to be able to win those types of games. Miami, Ohio, and Western Michigan for the MAC championship. Western Michigan is a 2.5-point favorite, and once again, the MAC was absolute chaos until the last moment. Miami, Ohio, 7-5 coming into this game. Western Michigan, 8-4. These are two teams that I think have surprised a lot of people and have dealt with a lot of doubt. I think there are a lot of people that did not expect either of these teams to be in the conference championship. And Miami, Ohio is without their starting quarterback. So that is something that really is unfortunate, but that's kind of the nature of college football. DeQuan Finn is no longer going to be the starting quarterback. That's been kind of a recent development in the last few weeks. So that's really too bad. Hasn't played since November 4th when they lost to Ohio and just decided that he was done. That was very strange. But Miami, Ohio found a way to get to the conference championship game. And there were probably some doubts when they lost to Ohio and Toledo, but then they beat Buffalo and Ball State to get there. They also hold a win over these Western Michigan Broncos from a previous game. So that is something that they can hang their hat on. Is just going to look different. Now, how do they move the football is going to be a big question. The rushing attack has largely been led by Jordan Brunson. The passing attack has been led by the explosive Cameron Perry. That's been very fun to watch. The defense, Adam Trick is one of the biggest names that most people probably don't know. 55 tackles, 12.5 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks. He has been a force up the middle for the Red Hawks and very, very good when they've needed him to be. Western Michigan's been kind of the surprise. 8-4 is better than a lot of people anticipated, and their defense has been a huge reason why. Ndame Tucker, the former Houston transfer, 49 tackles, 18 tackles for loss, 12 sacks. So they have their only defensive lineman that is an absolute stud. This is going to come down to quarterback play. Brock Lowry has been solid for this Western Michigan team. And we kind of knew that at the beginning of the year. He leads the team with 875 yards and 14 touchdowns, which is a big reason why I thought early in the season that he should be QB1. His mobility gives them that element that they need to win this game. Jalen Buckley's been solid as well, 636 yards and 6 touchdowns at the running back position. I think that Western Michigan is looking for revenge from that loss at the end of October, and they are playing with much more confidence than they were heading into that one, I think. I think that they are going to be a very good team to have to compete with, and Western Michigan is going to get their revenge in this one. I think they're a little bit more consistent. They don't have a quarterback controversy, and they're going to get revenge to win the MAC championship. Georgia and Alabama play for the SEC championship, which I think a lot of people expected that, but I don't think a lot of people expected them to get there the way that they did. Now, it's been a very interesting year for both teams, and 11-1 and 10-2 records are probably what you would have expected. That would have been one of your predictions, but at the same time, they haven't exactly been the most dominant teams. The SEC has been full of parity this year, and there have been some close calls for both sides. For Georgia, it's been a very interesting season. Game 3 against Tennessee, they win by 3. They struggled through that one. They lost in this matchup here to Alabama 24-21. So that was disappointing, but also you knew that Georgia was fine because they're competing with good teams. And then they go into the rest of the season. The Kentucky game had some issues, but they win by 21. They only beat Auburn by 10. They beat Ole Miss by 8. They beat Florida by 4. And you're thinking, okay, Georgia, what's going on here? Now, there is an explanation for it, but after that, they've really locked in. And until the Georgia Tech game, won fairly comfortably against the teams that they played. Now, the one thing with Georgia this year is it's been a journey. The beginning of the year, there was plenty to sort out. Gunnar Stockton had to prove himself. There were a lot of inexperienced players starting for the first time or stepping into bigger roles for the first time that caused some inconsistent play for Kirby Smart's team. That was always going to be a tough spot for Georgia to overcome. But the one thing that you have to give Kirby Smart credit for, and this team, is they compete. They play with tremendous effort. And sometimes that's good enough for certain teams to be able to win games. But when you have the talent level of Georgia, that's scary. Because now not only are you telling everybody that, yes, we have talented players, but also they are not going to give up. They are going to compete until the final whistle. That makes them even more dangerous. So even though they were struggling early in the season, they were fighting like crazy in those games. It always gave them a chance to win, and there's a reason why they're 11-1. If they did not play with that effort, this is probably like an 8-4 team. Gunnar Stockton has found his footing, and Mike Bobo deserves credit as well, because this has been a passing attack that has developed because of those two. They've been very solid, and Stockton's been a dual threat that has worked within his abilities. He hasn't really tried to play the hero. He's just taken what the defense gives him. Over 2,500 yards, 20 touchdowns to 5 interceptions, taking care of the football and not trying to put the ball in danger. The rushing attack has benefited as well. Nate Frazier and Chauncey Bowens have been a great 1-2 punch. 809 yards, 5 touchdowns for Frazier. Bowens, 493 and 6. It's also opened things up for the passing attack, and we've seen some familiar faces that we expected take over from there. Zachariah Branch, 691 yards and 4 touchdowns. His speed when he gets the football is so dangerous. And again, Bobo's done a great job of getting him involved and giving Stockton simple opportunities to be able to move the ball down the field. Colby Young, London Humphreys, Noah Thomas, Oscar Delp, Lawson Lucky, Dylan Bell, Cash Jones. They have a number of talented players that can step up when needed as well. So that is an element that makes this team dangerous. The numbers may not suggest that they're as dangerous as they actually are, but they are a problem. And the offense has taken huge strides since the beginning of the year. The defense is dealing with kind of similar things. We talked about the inexperience. The defense had a number of players that needed to step up into bigger roles, and they've been dealing with injuries as well. So that doesn't help But this group plays with an intensity. They play for each other, and Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann, the defense coordinator, have done a great job of motivating this team and reminding them that, hey, you can get beat on any given week, and you need to play to give yourself a chance to win in the fourth quarter. This team has taken that to heart, and they've combined that with the talent they have to make themselves a completely different team from the beginning of the season. That's tremendous. That's dangerous even, because this is a team that has the talent to beat anyone already, and now you combine it with the effort they're playing with. That's just a really tough team to beat. The problem is that they're facing an Alabama team that's already beaten them, and they look like they have been on a mission as well. Now, the one thing with this team is Alabama has that 23-21 loss to Oklahoma that Oklahoma just has their number recently. And I think that there are still some concerns about some of the games that they've struggled to pull away in. The LSU win by 11, the South Carolina win by 7, even the game against Auburn, even though it's a rivalry game, you found a way to win. There are some concerns probably with this team. The same team that also, they're a very different team, but the team that lost to Florida State, there are moments where that team shows up. There are moments where that team kind of shows up, but also they've done a great job of kind of moving past that. I wouldn't say that that is the same team anymore. We've seen a better team. Now, Ty Simpson has been a big reason why. His development has been incredible. Completing nearly 66% of his passes, over 3,000 yards passing, 25 touchdowns to 5 picks. Now, the one thing with this offense that we've had a concern about is the rushing attack has largely been lacking. The rushing attack has not been good. And I will say they made a more intentional effort against Auburn to run the football. And I thought they did a pretty good job of running the ball. The offensive line was up to the task. They were physical. And you're going to need to do that against Georgia. Plain and simple. Alabama must run the football well if they, one, want to make a run in the playoff, but two, win the SEC championship. Because while this passing attack is good, the balance needs to be there for them to look long-term and think about how do they win that national championship. Now, how do they manage that balance? How do they find that without having to be so intentional that it's obvious they're trying to run the football? I thought that the Auburn game showed the potential of what this group could do. The game was only a 7-point game, but Alabama did a lot of good things in that game that makes them potentially dangerous. Now, the passing attack benefited from that as well. The nice thing with this group is that we don't necessarily know, outside of Jeremy Bernard, who is going to be that go-to guy. Ryan Williams has had such a roller coaster of a year. Isaiah Horton has had his moments, but also times where we don't even remember that he's playing on the field. Latzia Brooks is also kind of the same thing. I don't know what Josh Cuevas' status, but the tight end position is going to be a big question mark with him either out of the roster or if he's going to be back in. I'm very curious to see how do they utilize the tight end position if Cuevas can't go. The offensive line also is a factor in that. I think there have been questions about their abilities, but this is a game where they get to remind everyone how good they actually are, how good they can actually be. That is going to be fun to watch, especially against this Georgia front, because Georgia does not care if Alabama's still trying to sort things out. They do not care if there's no balance in this Alabama attack. It's going to be fun to watch Glenn Schumann and Kirby Smart against this offense with Kalen DeBoer running the show. I think that Ryan Grubb deserves a lot of credit as well. That's an absolutely dynamic matchup to pay attention to. That's going to be so much fun to watch. I think that whichever group can find their footing early is going to gain an early advantage, which might be enough for them to win that game. Alabama's defense, though, is also a problem. Alabama's defense can be extremely disruptive, and I don't think that we talk about that group enough. I don't think that we talk about their abilities and also their improvement from week one. This is a completely different team, but also because this defense has done a lot of good things to keep the opposition in check for the most part. This defense has the ability to be disruptive. Now, have we seen it consistently? Not all the time, But if they can get to Gunnar Stockton, that's going to force him into some tough throws, and that's going to open up opportunities for this defense to create turnovers and get Georgia's offense off the field. That is going to be a big key. Now, it's going to be something they have to do, because if they can't do it, Georgia's shown that they can put up points and they can pull away in big games. This is a rematch. It's been a while since we've seen these two teams play, and it's going to be with huge things on the line. Alabama is a team looking to get a bye, but also they're 10-2. So I'd be very curious to see what happens to them if they lose this game. The committee said they're not going to really punish teams for making the conference championship games, but are you going to put a 10-3 team in the playoff? And if you do, where are you going to put them? That's a big question. Very interesting to see. For Georgia, you're in the playoff no matter what. Winning the SEC championship is just kind of a bonus. This is still going to be an absolute dogfight. This is going to be an absolutely phenomenal battle to watch. And when it comes to this game, I'm going to go with Georgia. I'm going to go with the team that's looked a little bit more consistent, a team that is looking for a revenge in that game from the rematch earlier this year, and a team that I think is playing a little bit more confidently than Alabama is right now. The Big Ten championship between the Indiana Hoosiers and Ohio State Buckeyes is going to be entertaining. Ohio State has maintained that they are the best team in college football, and Indiana has been right behind them, ready to prove their worth. The fact that Indiana's 12-0 is crazy. I think we've already become accustomed to Curt Cignetti's success that we don't even bat an eye that Indiana's 12-0. Indiana, the Indiana Hoosiers, the same team that was the floor mat for the Big Ten, is 12-0. I don't think we really can appreciate enough how crazy this season has been, or the last two seasons have been for Indiana. Now they get a chance to surprise us even more. A win over Ohio State would be absolutely crazy, and it would be a great win for the program. They're a lock for the playoff. Both teams are. So this game really doesn't have any implications of the playoff at all. But that doesn't mean it's not an important game. Ohio State still wants to win the Big Ten. Ryan Day wants that under his belt. Indiana wants this more than Ohio State, probably. I think that in terms of what's important to Indiana, or what has a bigger impact, Indiana winning the Big Ten would have a bigger impact than Ohio State winning another one. That being said, Ohio State is not going to lie down. They're not just going to say, oh, yeah, that's a nice story. Here, have the Big Ten championship. They are going to compete, and they are a major problem. And if you're looking for a game with great wide receiver play, great passing attacks, this is the game for you. Two quarterbacks that are absolutely phenomenal in Fernando Mendoza and Julian Sand, throwing to wide receivers that are going to be playing in the NFL. Elijah Surratt and Amar Cooper Jr. have been tremendous for Indiana this year. Ohio State's Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate are future first-round picks and future potential number one overall picks for Jeremiah Smith. Carnell Tate, though, is just having a phenomenal year as well. So if you're a defense in this game, you're probably not set up to have a ton of fun. That being said, both defenses are stacked. This might be the most hyped game of the weekend, and there are people saying that maybe not hyped. Hype is kind of just a relative term. It depends on what you're looking at. I'm super hyped for this game. I think this is going to be incredible. And for the people who say that the game doesn't matter or that it's a dud, what are we talking about? I think that people, when you make an argument that the games don't matter or don't have juice, have you watched these kids play? Have you watched them compete? What are we talking about? These games don't matter? Yes, if you're looking at it from a basic, superficial, surface level stance, then yes, the games relatively don't matter. But when you're saying that, I don't think people really understand what they're saying, because if they didn't matter, these kids would sit out. If this game, which if you're making the argument that this game doesn't matter, this is the perfect example. This is probably exhibit A in that argument. You would not see any of the starters play. What's the point? What's the point of playing this game if you don't think that it matters? So the fact that these starters are going to play tells me what? It does matter. people that make the argument that this game doesn't matter are not thinking of it the correct way, because we complain about how everything's about the playoff and then we say, oh, the games don't matter, it's not fun. These two teams are going to go at it like it matters. I promise you that. These two teams know what's at stake. And yes, the playoff is still coming up after that, and they are still going to compete. So let's stop that argument. It's just so dumb. This is a game that has a ton of talent, and Indiana has been so fun to watch this year, and they're an underdog for a reason. They're 5.5-point underdogs right now. Fernando Mendoza is going to find a way to potentially make that go in their favor. Over 2,700 yards, 32 touchdowns. Now, whether or not you think he belongs to be in the Heisman Trophy conversation, that's a different debate. I can hear that, I can understand that, but still a great year for Indiana's star quarterback. Roman Hemby has been an X factor as an addition. 866 yards for him as a runner, 6 touchdowns. Kalen Black, 730 and 7 touchdowns. Their third leading rusher is Kobe Martin with 452 and 6. Most of his production has actually come in garbage time. So that's a little bit misleading, but you also see the explosiveness. We talked about Cooper and Surratt as wide receiver options. EJ Williams has been solid for them this year. Charlie Becker stepped up as of late with Surratt being out. He has been really good. 389 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's averaging 19.5 yards per catch. So this offense is ready for this opportunity. They're just looking to showcase that they can do that. Really where this comes down to is Indiana's ability to stop Ohio State's offense. So it's going to come down to pressure on Julian Sayin and what this defensive backfield can do against this elite passing attack. Because while everybody's going to focus on Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, Max Clare is a problem. Brandon Inniss is a problem. They are super deep where you can't focus on one guy, which is unfortunate because one guy is really, really good. It's just that the next guy is also really, really good. So how do you disrupt that? Pressure is going to be a big thing. And if there's a group that has been good at getting pressure, it's Indiana. Elijah Hardy, 11.5 tackles for loss. Isaiah Jones, 12 tackles for loss. Stephen Daly, 18 tackles for loss. Tyreek Tucker, 10 tackles for loss. There have been a number of players that have stepped up this year and given Indiana the playmaking that they need. Now, the secondary is going to have their hands full. This is the best passing attack that they will have faced all year, and that puts pressure on this group, on Lewis Moore, on Amari Farrell, on Devin Boykin, on D'Angelo Pons. This is a group that has shown it can be very, very good in terms of turnovers, in terms of shutting down opposing offenses. It's just going to be a little more difficult to do that against Ohio State, but they welcome the challenge. Kurt Cignetti is not going to shy away from a challenge, and they're going to prepare like they are going to win the Big Ten championship. That is how they believe in themselves. That is what they expect to do. It's just going to be very difficult to do that against an Ohio State team that has been very good, even when Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate have been hurt. Julian Sayin has been the biggest difference for this team. Over 3,000 yards this year, 30 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. His development on a weekly basis has made him into the quarterback he is. And honestly, the progression that Ryan Day's put him through has made them a completely different team from what we saw in the first few weeks. Julian Sayin has the talent. He's been a calm, demeanor player for this team, and a big reason why Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith have been able to play as confidently as they have. They have a ton of confidence and a ton of ability already, but knowing that their quarterback's going to put the ball where they want it gives them even more confidence. Julian Sayin has been accurate as any quarterback in the entire country, and he's been a big reason for their team's success. Now, teams knew that they were going to throw the football, and Indiana knows what they want to do, but the rushing attack has added an element to be able to balance out this offense so teams can't just focus on the pass. Bo Jackson's been the star, but James Peoples, CJ Donaldson, even Isaiah West have been great for them this year. They have been big factors in balancing out this offense, an offense that is still trying to get their top 2 playmakers the ball. Now, if they get taken away, like I said, Max Clare is a problem. Brandon Inniss is a problem. So you can't just take away one guy. And that's what makes this Ohio State team so dangerous. It's just going to come down to how disruptive can Indiana be against this Ohio State offensive line, because this offensive line has taken care of business. And especially last week against Michigan, looked very good in terms of letting Julian Sand make plays and giving their playmakers time to get open downfield. The defense is also, I wouldn't call them the unsung heroes, but we're not talking about them, I think, as much as we should. This is a crazy good defense, and a defense that you can make an argument is better than what they were last year. Matt Patricia has been phenomenal. He has been such a good addition for this defense. And like I said, they're probably better than they were last year, even with so many new names. Arvell Reese has been an absolute stud in his new role. Caden Curry, same thing. The returners that we knew about, Sonny Styles, Caleb Downs, they have done exactly what we needed to see from them. They have done exactly what's expected of them to give Ohio State a chance to win like they have. And to win a Big Ten championship, they'll have to continue doing what they've been doing. So basically just business as usual. No big deal. When you look at what's happened for Ohio State recently, I think that this is a group that has been very interesting to watch this year. They have been very exciting and very, very good. So it's going to be interesting to see what they can do in this game. I do think that Ohio State is going to win this game. I do think that they are a very tough team to beat. And even though Indiana has been good, this is going to be an Ohio State team that wins the Big Ten championship. The game with the biggest college football implications is the ACC championship. Virginia win, they get in. Duke wins, then there's an opportunity for someone else to jump the ACC champion. That is going to be a crazy scenario, but we'll see what happens in this game. Now, Duke is 7-5, which kind of tells you the season that they've had, the season that they've been experiencing. Virginia is 10-2, a completely different year and playing with a ton of confidence. And when you look at these two teams, you feel a little bit differently about each one. And these are two teams that just played mid-November. So we've seen how this game plays out. Duke's just hoping for a different result. Now, the offense for Duke has been just fine. Darian Mensah has been one of the better additions in the transfer portal by any school, and he's been great for Duke. 3,400 yards, 28 touchdowns, just 4 interceptions. The rushing attack has been solid as well. Nate Shepard, 865 yards and 9 touchdowns. Anderson Castle, 435 yards and 11 scores. The passing attack, though, is obviously the big component of this team's success. Cooper Barkate, 978 yards, 6 touchdowns. John Brown, 665 yards, 3 touchdowns. The passing attack has given this team a chance week in and week out, and that's been huge for the Duke Blue Devils. Now, the disappointing part of Duke this year, and honestly the surprise, has been the defense. This is a defense that returns quite a bit of talent, and it's talent that has a bright future. But this is a group that has struggled, and the secondary has been a big part of that, which is surprising because they have Chandler Rivers, which is a guy who has a bright future in the NFL when he eventually goes there. You also have had a number of players that can help that secondary as well. The defensive line has a number of big names. The linebacker position has experience. So it's been kind of a surprise and a big disappointment for Duke, because if this defense even plays average, this is a much better Duke team than 7-5. And that's what kind of is a concern about them potentially winning the ACC, is that you have to do something that you already couldn't do with beat Virginia, and you have to do it in a way where you're not giving up points and hoping that your offense can move the ball against a better than expected Virginia defense. That's a formula that's going to be tough to do, but I don't know. It's a chance. They have an opportunity. We'll see if they take it. Now, Virginia is in a much different place. When you look at what this team has done, nobody expected 10-2. Nobody expected them to be in the ACC championship. So the fact that they're here speaks to the work that Tony Elliott has done, speaks to the work that this team has done, and the players that have stepped up. Chandler Morris was a great addition by this team. Now, has he been an elite quarterback? No, but he has been a consistent enough quarterback to give them a chance. Over 2,500 yards, 14 touchdowns to just 7 picks. The rushing attack has also been huge for them. Jamari Taylor, 997 yards and 14 touchdowns. Huge performance for him. Sherrell Harris has led the team at receiving, 56 catches, 809 yards, and a team leading 5 touchdowns. He's tied for first with Sage Ennis. This is a team that under Tony Elliott has taken huge strides on both sides of the ball. The offense has been good, but the defense is really where they've taken their game to another level, because we knew this offense had playmakers. We knew this offense had ability, but how were they going to be able to do that if their defense struggled? Well, the nice thing for them is their defense has taken their game and elevated it as well. You've seen disruptive players for this group, and that's something you're going to need to see. The front seven is going to have to create explosive plays by limiting what Duke can do offensively, getting to Darian Mensah, limiting those explosive playmakers. That is a big key. The wide receivers are going to give this secondary some issues, so getting to the quarterback is going to be a big key. If not, Duke's going to have some success. And when you look at what they did in the first matchup, limiting Duke's offense was something that Virginia did a pretty good job of doing. And that allowed their offense to just go about business as usual, because the offense should have success against this Duke defense. The offense shouldn't have too many problems moving the ball against a Duke defense that has been porous all year. It just comes down to their own defense and what it can do against Duke's offense. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a matchup that I think a lot of people are excited to watch. And again, if chaos happens and Duke finds a way to win, that's where things get very interesting. A Duke win opens up a world of possibilities for college football, and it's going to be fun to see what they can do if that does happen, or what happens to the college football playoff.